Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of Framing New Heights. My name is Michael Hicks.
And I'm Amber.
And my co host today, Amber Dobson. You guys like her, you love her, and that's why she's back on. So, today we are really going to dive into the importance of, or how I should say, athletics play an important role in your career, in your relationships, and ultimately, I think as a parent, don't you think?
I do.
So let's kind of go right away and kind of
We should set some background.
okay,
Like
let's
why
go.
why athletics, Michael? What there has to be a reason we're talking about athletics. Like this is important to you and I both individually. And I think part of the reason that we are attracted to each other.
Oh, is athletics? Yeah, well, that's that's going a little off topic, but let me kind of give the
Well,
context
but I
because
think if we're talking about how it impacts relationships too, I think it's important that we share
yeah,
our histories, just like
yeah.
briefly.
So we'll be in. I'll just share this really quick with everybody that are listeners. So I was an advocate, like literally, sports got me off the streets, man. I was doing some nasty, stupid shit. I was I was that kid that hung out with the kid next door to realize that you could switch price tags onto on another price tag, and it would be
So
cheaper, and
dumb.
you would buy it for a cheaper price. And I got caught at Kohl's department store, and I got caught at the store called Prangies. So it happened multiple times, and I really had no true direction because I mean, honestly, I think I say all that because I had no father, and that's what kind of brought me into this. I had some strong role models that were teachers that eventually became kind of like fatherly like to me. What I guess what was important is I learned that there's parameters in life. There's you got to be disciplined. You got to have understanding, and you so we're having this conversation, and I'm like, what can I do in our next podcast topic? you know I bring in a lot uh, with just my daughter and I, when it's just us in the household, is how are you being a good team player? And I've used that reference in when I've coached high school, college, professionals, and I even use it in as a father. When we go grocery store, right? Hey, Nola, how are you being a good team player? I want you to be a good team player. So what does that mean? Well, carrying the groceries in, carrying some stuff in that she feels comfortable with. So I guess teamwork, I guess, is a really big piece that's kind of where I want to start with. Go ahead.
Well, so athletics, you played and you coached.
I did.
Okay. So,
Honing it in, Michael, bringing it
yeah,
all in.
that's what I'm here for. Similarly, played myself.
Yeah, tell everybody your story. This
What?
is well, I think it's a pretty cool story.
Oh,
Amber was a three-time or two-time state champion.
Trace. Three.
Three times. I don't know if we have a Guinness Book of Records out there. So if any of our listeners are out there looking,
Oh,
like how many state championships do people get? And that's remarkable.
for gymnastics. So I think it's not as well known. So not as many people talk about it. But yes, was a gymnast my whole life. So just that, you know, commitment to a sport from little on, that the time for you as a child, you're spending hours in the gym after school, missing really pivotal things with friends, school dances, stuff like that. You just learn that that's just part of life, and you make friends easy because you have to adapt to all these different groups of friends. But then I also played volleyball. I played I somehow managed to play volleyball and do gymnastics when I was in elementary and middle school, and then also played in high school, and continued gymnastics and volleyball through high school. And now I get to coach my daughter in volleyball. And I I just think part of why I love Michael so much, and he laughs about this, I love that he teaches athletics. I think I love that he teaches movement, and I love that he was and is a coach. I love how he teaches my kids. I love how he teaches his daughter. Just these athletics, in my opinion, I don't think gets any, how do you say it? Like that drive that you have and that passion, um
Yeah,
for something. I think
yeah.
you can have passion for more than just athletics, but it's that commitment to something that I think kids in particular need.
Well, I remember this distinctively, and if we have any parents out there that are have kids in high school, get them involved in a sport, especially a fall sport if they're coming in as a freshman, because they get to meet kids before school starts. And then when school starts, they feel more confident. They know where the school is, they know how to get to their classes. I think that's a really, really big piece. I'll never forget that I at a school that I was at, the athletic director would always say, get involved somehow. Don't just go home. School is cool. However, like sports and activities is really where you learn to become more social, become more disciplined, become more dedicated. And you talked about giving up stuff. And that's a really good way to kind of segue into, as a parent, we have to make sacrifices, right?
Mhm.
Like if we've got a trip planned, well, what are we doing to save money to get to that trip? Or, you know, if I make food and I always make sure I give my food to my daughter first. Yes, I sometimes make plenty. Sometimes I forget and there's a little bit left over, but I always want to make sure that she's taken care of. And I think that's where I think going back to the original topic is why being athletic is you kind of it's kind of the concept of being a selfless and being a team player and giving your best, whatever that may be. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
Yeah. And with that, what's vital in those areas, you guys, is you you have a scheduled time that you have to be somewhere. It's like time management,
It
right?
is.
I mean, don't you think being in athletics, you really learn and hone in on an effective time management? Because I mean, you got a crazy schedule during the week where you're doing this, and this, and then you got to do this, and you got to take your kids somewhere else. Like time management is essential as being an athlete.
Well, right. I mean, the kids these days have so much going on between just like their normal school academics plus any additional like clubs or activities that they're in, and then sports too, and they want to do it all. And that's cool and rightfully so, and as parents you want them to do it all, and you'll be that Uber driver for them or that cheerleader in the stands, and you will help them succeed in whatever way possible. But they're going to have to get like make those sacrifices too. That might be homework in the car, that might be
Mm,
dinner made ahead of time, eating it in the car,
yeah.
like that. You have to be prepared and they will have to be prepared. Like you might have to set your clothes out ahead of time, or you might forget something, and it's to deal with adversity too. Like that's just
Yeah, and
things you got to be prepared for.
I struggle because I've got a fourth grader who and I remember distinctively, like, these are monumental years if you're going to be in athletics, how they really mold you and create the person you're going to be. And truly, you guys, for those of you that are listening, all of our high achievers out there and people that are growth minded, is athletics have really, I want to go back a little bit about that. Athletics really turned the page for me, because I realize when you're in athletics, the importance of when you put in the work. Like, you still have practice, however, you still got to put in the work.
Yeah.
After practice.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever that might be for me, and I talked about this in a podcast that I was just interviewed on, is I remember distinctively, we didn't have a basketball hoop, but I'd go outside and in the winter, I'd shovel. And mind you, for those of you that listen to the podcast, and if you're in the Midwest, winters, when you take a basketball and you put it outside and you attempt to dribble, it doesn't dribble. It doesn't dribble very well. So your hands are cold, your hands are numb, but you shovel up the way and you get shots up. So, but that takes really strong discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think continually doing it over and over and over, it creates solid habits. Mm-hmm. But going back to what I was talking about is like, how do you teach? I teach so many people, so many strong things, but how do you teach a 10-year-old the importance of being involved something? And I'm like, you got to be involved with something. It's like, where do you draw the line? And you want, because I'm just going to be the first one to tell you, being athletic, I was in high school, and then in the college, I got an opportunity to play college basketball. The discipline you need to be in those areas, and then the work that goes in on top of it, really solidifies, I think, who you become. Because you can be I think, someone that really hones in on discipline, direction, teamwork. I may not always be the best disciplinist, I guess, with my daughter, which she said to me. Like
It's so funny, you guys.
I teach and coach is like
it's like he can just talk the talk and walk the walk, and then like Nola walks in the room and he like crumbles. It's really sweet, but it's funny because I would consider myself a very like, I'm the mom that will do anything for my kids. Like, I will be the parent that folds their laundry and puts it away until they're like 27 years old. I know that I'll do it. But when it comes to them joining activities or doing sports, I'm like, you're doing it, and you will go and you will sit there. And if they are crying, if they are kicking, if they are screaming, I will physically lift them up to go. And here's why. Because I don't think you can actually say that you don't want to do something until you make a valid attempt to do it. And I say valid attempt because doing something one time and then you say you didn't like it, that doesn't count. I think you have to do something at least 3 times before. My daughter was like so against basketball. She's like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. But she signed up and we paid the money for her to go. And her dad and I at the time were like, no, you have to go. And you have to go 3 times. And she cried and cried and cried. She was in 3rd grade at this point. And we went to practice. We stayed for like the first 5 minutes. She was good. She came home. She's like, it's okay. Next night came, cried again. Like, no, you have to go. By the 3rd time, she was like, it's fine. I'm good. I'm good. And then now it's stuck. Now she'll be in 6th grade and going. Now she might quit eventually. It might not be her thing. And I don't think, like my son did soccer for 4 years now. And he decided, I don't like soccer. And I don't like it anymore. Okay.
So where do you stop the push? And that's the one thing, as former athletes, obviously 3-time state champion. I got 1 game away from state. I'll never forget that, my junior year. Such a cool memory experience. But where do you draw the line on push? Because and as former athletes, is we are so engraved in our heads. And for those of you that are listening, you're so engraved in your head. You push through adversity. You sometimes push through pain. You push through all of these things. And yet it's like, where where do you stop the push
Right.
as a parent? And I'll give a little story here. Is my daughter got in the theater? She got casted for a cool role, and the whole model. I want to come back into a point that you talked about is I always say in my household, the Hickses never quit. That's kind of been a slogan in the household. And how do you use that slogan and you allow them to do all the things, and then they get to a point, I'm generalizing here, they get to a point where now it's emotionally hitting them. And you got to know, I think, as a parent, when to back off and when to go, when to accelerate, when to put the brakes on, so to speak. That's the struggle that I have. And I'll just say this really quick for our listeners. So she got all the way up until the day of, and we just kind of, her mom and I just pulled the plug because it was too much anxiety. It was the point of couldn't hold food down. It was all of that. And where do you draw the line? Like, where, you know what I mean? Like, you still want to be this patient, this understanding, this caring parent. It's like, where do you draw the line on the push? Because we've been athletes. We know what it takes. More so than anybody is the push that you have to be excellent. And I know I attempt each day to strive for greatness, and I don't want to be average. And I'm teaching that to my daughter. Like, where do you draw the line on the push aspect as a parent?
I mean, that's a tough one because I also like I was around when this was happening, and I mean, no one wants to see their kid in pain like that and throwing up and just not being themselves. And I think you and Noah's mom made the right decision. Obviously,
Yeah.
you did what was best for
Yeah.
your daughter. I will say though, like I remember being 10, 11 in gymnastics, like standing up on the beam for 3 hours with my arms up, afraid to do a skill.
3 hours.
The whole practice, I had to stand up there, and I was sobbing. My mom came. She'll tell you this story.
Wow.
She came in to pick me up, and I was still there because I was so afraid to do it. And my coach was like, "You're not leaving until you do it." So
So how did that trait transcend into your career, into your relationships, as a mom? Like,
I think for
wow.
me, it really, when I got into high school, into into volleyball specifically, I remember I moved up to JV my freshman year and then moved up to varsity my sophomore year. And then when my classmates met me on varsity, I remember the varsity coach pulled me aside and said, "Amber, why do your friends cry when I give them like constructive feedback?" And I vividly remember saying, "Because they've never been coached." Like, so for me, I knew from little on what it was like to be told, like, you need to
That's
be
interesting.
better. You are not doing this well.
Yeah.
You need to do better. You need to practice more. Like, that's all I knew.
Hmm.
And so that didn't hurt my feelings when a coach in volleyball would say, "Faster, harder, like that was
Hmm.
not good. Do it again,
Hmm.
again."
Hmm.
Like, okay, I will do it again.
Yeah. And when you are not in that, when you don't have coaches and different coaches, right? You learn from good coaches, bad coaches, indifferent coaches. If you don't have that coach pushing you, or it's a male or it's a female, and they're very direct, that can be a big, scary moment,
Hmm.
and like you kind of putting it back into perspective and back to our topic is that 3 hours on that beam really articulated to your daughter, pushing her to go to basketball,
Yes. Oh, 100%.
you know?
Like, I know, and I know you know your kids too, right?
Right,
Like,
right, right.
I knew once she would get there, she would be okay. Like, it's the buildup, right? It's like the nervousness, the anxiousness of doing something that you've never done before and not knowing, like, it's kids say, well, I don't know how to play basketball. Well, of course you don't. You've never done it. How would you
neither did
know?
LeBron James.
Right.
Neither did LeBron James.
It's like my son is like, well, I'm not good at football. Well, of course you're not good at football. You've never played football. They don't have the capacity to understand yet that that's how you get good, is by playing. And I think to your point earlier, like, when do you push?
Yeah.
I think at some point then, okay, you don't need to do anything, but eventually when they want to,
It may be too
it
late.
may be too late.
Yeah, because then they're the bench, right? Then they're there
Yeah.
just to support,
Yep.
and that's going to be.
Or they may be really skilled and they'll be like, see, I told you, I'm
Yeah.
fine.
What do you think of, as a former athlete, like how we can bring that into perspective of our career and relationships? But I was going to say how challenges really create opportunities. Like how have you, as a parent from your athletic background, provided challenges for your kiddos to provide that opportunity? Because I look back and I don't know. I think what I really emulate in the Hicks household is just to be a quality human being. And at the end of the day, my daughter doesn't have to be in athletics. She doesn't have to be a trombone player. I don't know why I thought of trombone. Oh, I know why, because we just went to a volleyball game and they were playing trombones in the college atmosphere. But what I want, and this is, I think, from the athletic perspective, and I would talk smack, you guys, when I'd play. I'd be that player that would talk smack. And now I've learned that that's not the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to say something or whatever it might be. So I guess what I'm coming back to is teaching them, if they're not going to be in athletics, is what I do. And maybe my daughter will. She's got a long road ahead of her. But what I like to do is just how you're being a quality teammate in the classroom. Are you being a good student? Are you being kind to others? Are you caring? Are you listening? I mean, those are all attributes that I learned as an athlete that I bring into my household. And even when we're sitting at the table, you've seen this, is and from athletics, I learned a big thing about respect. Respect is key. And when we're sitting down eating, after we're done eating, Dad, can I be excused? You've witnessed that multiple times. And for some people that might be like, why do they need to be excused? Well, that moment at the table is kind of like an athletic event, because we are sharing in fellowship. We are sharing our thoughts for the day, our things that happen. We may laugh, we may giggle. I always talk about what was one cool thing that you really learned today, that you really enjoyed, that you want to talk about. Some of them might be like, I don't know. But then we eventually get to everybody and everybody shares. But I think that's a really good time to really come together as a family and as a team. And I've learned through that can be a little bit of a challenge. Yeah. And what's important is, when it's just a challenge, is that we have the opportunity to really hone in on what are the boundaries for that challenge. And every child is a completely, totally different. So you have to know your child. You have to know where their limitations are, what they can handle, what they can take. So the push is obviously something that you have to be very aware of.
Yeah. I mean, I think in my household, in my career, I'll say I can really handle feedback, and I can handle
that's really well said.
Growth. I really strive to do well, but I can also handle really high pressure situations. I've worked in really crisis level issues for a very long time in my career. And I can, even if my heart rate is going really fast, I can really present very calmly. I've been told that. I know that about myself. I can speak very slowly. And
Calmly.
yes. So I think that's something that athletics has brought to my career.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. We watched Simone Biles together, and
Hmm.
I've never really been into gymnastics until I've been with Amber, but I completely respect the sport. But when you're on that beam, or you're on that, and you got all these eyes on you, and the
Yeah.
pressure of succeeding and being calm in
Yeah.
those opportunities is awesome. And I think that in retrospect too, because our kids listen, they see more by our actions than what they listen to.
Hmm.
And when you're doing those things, and if one of our kiddos is raising their voice, talk quieter.
Hmm.
you know
Yep.
um I like what you said. And one thing that I really like in our circumstance is the accountability. I think in a team environment, there's always accountability, right? You have you have athletes that are going to score in basketball. I'm thinking from a basketball perspective, and then you have athletes that are just going to rebound. You have athletes that are just going to play defense,
Hmm.
whatever it might be. What, and you also then have that person that's got your back. And I feel athletics has kind of taught us that perspective, because we talk about that. I got your
Yeah.
back, or the accountability. Like we just recently, before this podcast, we came up with 3 goals that we have for our relationship, and then 3 individual goals that we have for ourselves. And I think that's a really important piece, because in athletics, you need goals, you need ideas and suggestions. And I think even in your career, wherever it might be, if you want to be certain, like maybe you're a project manager right now and you want to be a project engineer. Well, how are you getting there? What's the goals to get to that next step? Does that make sense?
Hmm. It does. I think too, for what I bring in to my house is really, from an athletic stance, is some grit. Like,
I
I
like that word.
think I do too. The world is not very kind sometimes, and I love the teamwork aspect. I love the meeting new people. I think knowing how to like go up and engage with someone is a quality that you need throughout your whole life.
Hmm.
Like, to meet someone like, "Hi, I'm so and so. Like, where are you from? What do you do? How are you?" Like, to just find something to say, or how something to connect with some other person that's not like you, but now you have something to relate to them to. You both play this sport together, or you did at one point. And then I think, going through like highs and lows and ups and downs, and
Mm.
how you deal with that.
Mm.
Like, you lost the game. How do you deal with it?
Adversity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had a bad day. You did not so well this game. How are you going to deal with it? You can have your moment, but how do you overcome that? How do you pick yourself up and show your face the next day? Like,
Well, we control our day. I want to be very, to our listeners out there, you don't have bad days. I, I teach this in my framework. You can have a bad moment. You can have a bad this. You can have a bad that. You can have a bad minute. You can have a bad situation. No doubt. After that situation, you control that. How are you going to change that? Now, you can fixate on that negative piece. And then, because our brains are wired to concentrate, mainly 80% of our brains are concentrated on negative thoughts and perceptions. Are you going to continue feeding that or not? Going back to adversity, I think adversity is something that you learn in sports. You have, and I've been in games, y'all, where coaching, literally coaching, going to whole dunk towns, that the referees were hanging out in the saloons after and knew the other coach from the other team, reffing, blatantly so wrong in every context. It brought to me, though, that life's not fair.
Right. It's not.
And it's, if you guys, I don't want to say you guys in general, I just want to say for our listeners, if you truly believe that life needs to be fair, you have a victim mindset that you need to get rid of.
Right.
And that was something early on in coaching that I saw, because I would coach at the freshman level, and you would see these just terrible calls, terrible situations. And anyway, it really honed in and painted a picture for me. That's a great opportunity to bring into your family and into your childhood, or into your even your career. Is you may not get the promotion. It may not be fair.
Mm-hmm.
Same with, I have a kid that's completely kind, caring, considerate. Dad, why do they treat me like this? That's just how life is. Life's not always rainbows and unicorns. However, you need to understand that you can get through those moments through sports because of adversity. Does that make sense? I'm kind of going on a tangent here.
No, it does. It absolutely makes sense. I'll share a little fun tidbit about adversity. So Michael's just, making my head big, saying I'm a 3-time state champion. But why I'm not a 4 is because my sophomore year, I didn't even I didn't qualify in all around. So this was a very big deal, because here I am, like, really great gymnast, and then I didn't qualify at sectionals for all around. I qualified in individual events, but not in all around. Talk about embarrassment, walking back into the high school that Monday, and they do announcements, I'm qualifying for blah, blah, blah. Oh, Amber, you didn't qualify. Cool. Then having to face that, knowing all these expectations are set for you.
Yeah.
And then you have to talk, what happened? Well, I didn't do well, is what happened. I sucked it up. I fell, it was a bad meet. It was a bad meet. And I have no one it was a bad meet. That's all it was. Athletes have bad games, bad meets, bad
on to the next thing.
performances.
Yeah. And I would always say, after a loss to either my pros or whatever, put it behind you. It's
Right.
done. What can we learn from it, though? And I'm sure, you came back with a vengeance. So
and what do you learn from it? You learn. So there was another competitor from another school similar to me. She had the same situation happen the next year. She was a very good gymnast. And so I wrote her, encouraged by my wonderful mother, because wondering how she felt.
You wrote her a letter.
I did.
That is
my mom was like,
the reason why I'm with this woman. Wow.
You got to think how, and I don't remember her name. I think it was Maddie.
Okay.
How Maddie feels. You went through that same thing, Amber. You should write her. And I did. And she came up to me and she was like, that was so nice. And because athletes get athletes, and you can understand what people are going through. And it's just a lot. You show up for your school and pride and things like that. And
do you think, well, that was a really cool story, and thank you for sharing that. Some of the stuff I'm learning right now on this podcast while we're recording, excuse me. Do you think, being former athletes, we have higher expectations, not only for ourselves, but for life,
yes,
for career, for our kids? Do you, versus, we can kind of go off on this, versus maybe someone that never did athletics? Are their expectations just as solid as someone that has? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm not sitting here saying sports are the end all be all. I think it's very important for a child to find something that they can pour into outside of just school and friends. I think there needs to be an outlet for them, whether it's, I don't even know, you name it. Um, I don't know if there's a difference.
Well, I mean, I learned that, I mean, I have expectations of my daughter, especially in school. And that might be because I'm a long-term educator or whatever it might be. We just have, I think you just have expectations.
See, and I've never had expectations because they've always exceed, like,
They go beyond.
they've just been good. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like, now, however, if that starts slipping, then it's like, oh, maybe now I have to set the bar a little bit. But I think the bar has been set. Like, they've set this like proverbial bar for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you understand as a parent that your actions kind of spoke for
Yeah.
that. And I think that's the reason why, though. You know, I don't think, you know, as former athletes, is we don't have unrealistic expectations, but you have expectations. And I think expectations should be in relationships. Expectations should be as a parent. You know, like for example, daughter just had a sleepover. Have fun, enjoy it. However, the expectation is you're in bed by 9:15 on a weekend night. Those are the expectations. And probably parents that are not former athletes would probably do the same thing. I think, I don't know. I think parents that have been involved in athletics have a better way of dealing with adversity. If there it is. I think that's truly what it is. I think because then here's the thing, those of you that are listening, if then you're painting that same picture on with your child. So for example, I just recently moved into a brand new house. So much was wrong with it. Had to get it fixed. It's all fixed, caught up. But there was a lot of stress in that situation. And I had a conversation with my daughter. You know, how's dad doing? Can dad be better? And I think that's an important question to ask your kids. And she said, "Well, Dad, you got upset with me." Well, what do you mean I got upset with you? Well, you kind of raised your voice, and I don't raise my voice, you guys. Literally, if I were to shout like I was coaching, my daughter would be like, "Who is this person in this house?" She wouldn't even recognize me. However, it was an opportunity for me to be like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then I was like, "Well, did Dad do that at the condo?" And she was like, "No." Oh, okay. So now I put two and two together. Dad was underneath a lot of stress. And for those of you that know this, divorce, moving, and I think death are one of the top three stressors in someone's life. And she never saw dad in a stressful situation. So it was a good conversation to have, a good learning moment, a good teachable moment. And we reflected on it. We talked about it. And she understood, which was a great opportunity to bring that up. So again, adversity. I think if you dealt with it completely, you're like, who the hell is this guy? Just it's not the guy that I know. But I mean, that's the thing too, is like our character is revealed through adversity. And I may have brought up my voice a little bit on a situation, and which was very different for my daughter. I'm very level, very calm, very, I don't know what other words you can help me out with. However, she saw me in a different context, and sports do that as well. Like they really bring out your true character. And sometimes when I was playing, y'all, I had some bad character. I'd talk crap to people, like literally.
Well,
Anyway.
when I'm coaching volleyball, I mean, I'm kind of a yeller as a parent. Like, my mom was too. Like, she says she wasn't, but she totally was. And my sister and I are loud parents. So when I'm coaching my daughter, I'm like loud, and he'll see this at the games. Like, I am loud. and so she's used to it, and the other girls might not be. But that's just how I kind of show my passion. Like, this is what we're doing, and I'm very like to the point. But I think too, I just want to say this: sports for my kids is also a way to keep them moving and active.
Yeah,
And like I know for you, you work out with your daughter. I
I
don't.
do.
I mean, I don't have my kids work out with me. For one, I do it in the morning. They're sleeping, but also they that's a way that I know that they get some movement in during the day outside of just like FIAD class or just recess and things like that.
Yeah,
It's kind of like peace of mind for me a little bit in life. So
yeah, and thank you guys for continuing to support and be part of this podcast, Framing New Heights. I want to share this really quick before we end the podcast. I'm coming up to a monumental 100th episode. I need your opinions. So I'm going to give you my Instagram handle, and you either can message me there if you feel comfortable with, but it's Coach Hicks MB. No, wait. Coach underscore Hicks MB. Right?
yeah.
Okay. I don't even know my own handle apparently. But please do that. And because I don't know, I've been getting ideas, I've been reading blogs on what to do, but 100 is pretty monumental in the podcast world, and it's because of you guys, that because of you listeners and your feedback, and you continually, and I drop a new episode every Wednesday, so thank you immensely. I would love to get your value though and your feedback on what I can do. Anything else you want to add before we leave today?
I don't think so. I think this was fun. I I find a lot of value in athletics, even to this day.
Yeah. I mean, it's immense the amount of value that it brings and what it's brought to
We
me.
share it with our kids. We do a lot together as a blended family. We play kickball. We play
Oh, we do.
sports
Yeah.
together.
Lightning,
A
kickball,
lot of the things we do with the kids
volleyball.
is around athletics.
Yeah, that is true. That
Or
is true.
an athletic type thing. Maybe not a sport, but it's like
Something.
running outside.
Yeah.
It's a very athletic.
Going for a walk. We
Yes.
go for a walk. We went for a walk as a family.
Mhm.
No cell phones. Got a little pushback on that, but we did those things. And I want to say this. You talk about movement. That's the thing. Maybe my child's not going to be an athletic, but I'm going to tell you all right now, she's going to know how to work out. She's going to know
Yeah.
how to work out more
That's
than
why I
boys.
mentioned that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you did, because she can do push-ups better than most boys. She can probably do a full body squat. There's exercises and techniques that I'm showing her what to do. And I'm not giving her big weights, you guys. She's got a 3-pound dumbbell. All right. So fitness is very important. And I think if you are adamant about that and you lead by example, your kid's going to lead by example, because ultimately every parent says what I'm about to say. Oh, I just want my kid happy. No, you don't want your kid happy. You want your kid healthy, because if your kid's healthy, they will be happy. And it starts with discipline, which is from athletics or fitness or whatever realm. All right. Until next time, thank you all for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you send it to 5 of your friends. And as always, 1% better in mind, body, and soul. You can put up the other hand.
Yeah.
And stay flexed.